Hi, this is John Arnold of ICP Strategies. I'm here live on the show floor of the IT Expo in Los Angeles, and I am running the Smart Grid Summit this week during the Expo, and I'm focusing on all kinds of themes, and we're going to explore some of those in these interviews. So for this interview, I have with me today Dr. Gary Hawkins. He is the CTO of Celergy Networks, and we're going to talk a little bit about Smart Grid. So Gary, welcome, and glad to have you here at the show.
Thanks very much for inviting me along today.
Sure, happy to have you, and we'd like to start, of course, by hearing a bit about Celergy Networks and what the company's core focus is.
Sure. Celergy Networks is a nationwide provider of IT services. We basically do the design, engineering, implementation, commissioning, and lifecycle management of IT hardware. Specifically, we'll do anything from basic cabling services through to the installation of complex systems like VoIP over IP, phone systems, point of sale systems, WAN, LAN. We also do consulting services in the IT space as well, around things like virtualization, data storage, etc., etc. My specific interest is in the last 18 months or so, we have also been drawn into the smart grid space, and in particular smart grid communications. And as you know, that's a very exciting area at the moment. There's a lot of growth there, and we were finding that some of our clients, specifically our utility clients, were interested to see if we could bring some of our expertise to bear on this new area for them.
Okay, well that sounds like a story we're hearing many times over here at the summit, right? A lot of companies who are not from this industry are finding opportunity and problems that need to be solved. So the utilities, of course, are in a regulated market, different industry, a little slower to come into this world of internet communications. I'm really interested to hear how you're finding them to work with as opposed to your more traditional clients who might be a little further along this path.
Well, I think one of the things we find is that obviously the sales life cycle with a utility is a lot longer process. Mm-hmm. Obviously, as you said, it's a regulated business. They also have the Public Utility Commission to go through a lot of their business cases and get acceptance of that. And obviously with things like Smart Grid Grant and the DOE, there's a lot of process and procedure that we don't normally have to deal with. So it's a longer process, but I think what we're finding is that the utilities have a need for expertise in certain areas that they don't really have, because a lot of the systems they've been dealing with are fairly old technology, and so we're able to bring our expertise to bear with a lot of the newer technologies, such as WiMAX technology, for instance, or Muni Wi-Fi concepts, or any of the newer wireless technologies that might be applicable to smart grid communications. Okay.
Now, is Celergy focusing with them more on their internal IT requirements as an organization, or customer-facing and partner-facing out to the outside world?
So we started with many of our utility clients, obviously, in the pure IT space. Mm-hmm. But with respect to smart grid specifically, now what we're trying to help utilities do is understand the challenges they face with respect to smart grid communications networks. Mm-hmm. Help them architect those networks, and help them try and address some of the unique areas or specific challenges that they've got. For instance, one of the big challenges the utility have is the lack of spectrum. As you know, there's no unified spectrum band available for smart grid communications today.
Yes, and the U.S. in particular has this problem.
Exactly. And so one of the areas that we've been looking at is the use of multiple types of spectrum, both licensed, semi-licensed, and unlicensed spectrum, and how to best bring that together so that the utility can leverage a resource that it's going to cost it money to acquire, and how it can best leverage some of the resources that are free, for instance, such as semi-licensed 365 mm-hmm. or unlicensed Wi-Fi, etc., and how to best combine those aspects together.
Okay. And then on that note, is it more for them to save money or to have increased capabilities with their customers?
I think really at the end of the day, it's about getting the best bang for the buck. As you're aware, spectrum's not a cheap commodity. And so consequently, a utility's not in the position where they can justify a business case around obtaining many tens of megahertz of spectrum to deploy a smart grid communication system. So the type of architectures that we've been looking at, combining licensed, semi-licensed, and unlicensed, allows them to get the greatest throughput and capacity to meet the requirements that they have, and at the same time allow them to acquire spectrum which, you know, the carriers are not looking for. The carriers wouldn't, for instance, be looking at much narrower chunks of spectrum.
Okay. All right. Well, Gary, that's a fascinating overview, and I think there's more of this we're going to see in this space. Companies like yours coming into this world and really showing them some things that they really didn't have capabilities to do before.
Well, we hope so, and obviously from our perspective, you know, we're already working with a number of utilities, and we're looking to expand that. As I said earlier, it's a very exciting area, and for me in particular, it's good transitioning from more carrier-orientated wireless to something where we're looking at this specific segment.
Yes. Okay. And with that, let's wrap it up. So thank you very much. Appreciate your time coming out today.
Thanks for having me on.
Okay, Gary.